Good evening. Thank you for joining us in worship today. Today we are going to start out our new series on the Beatitudes. How many of you have ever seen something so amazing that it just blew your mind? Maybe it was a firework finale. Maybe it was that comeback in the remaining minutes of the game. Maybe it was that brand new car that just drove by. No matter what one sees, when they're amazed, they are sure glad they were there to see it. One of my amazements in my life is illusionists. They amaze me. When I watch them, I think, how in the world did you just do that? And most of the time, I am so in awe that I'm speechless. Now, if you have not experienced such amazement, like illusions, prepare to be amazed. I'm going to try to give you a little taste, but I need your assistance, all right? So, follow my lead. Go ahead and hold out your hands, palms down. Perfect. Now I would like you to bring your thumbs downward toward the ground, making sure your palms are outward. Now, cross your hands. So you're right over your left, it really doesn't matter. Now, ma'am, are you left or right-handed?
Both.
Both? You're both-handed. Okay, that works, that works. Sir, are you left or right-handed?
Right.
You're right-handed. Okay, so make sure your thumbs are still down. Now, go ahead and hold your hands. Cute. Now go ahead and straighten them to untangle your arms. It's amazing, right? I don't tell my secrets, sorry. So, that's pretty amazing. And it could be more amazing, but I do not have that kind of power. I can only do illusions. I know someone who does do this though, for real. No illusions about it. Prepare to be amazed, because God's power is the real deal. So let's go ahead and open our Bibles up to Luke chapter 6, verse 17. And I'll go ahead and read for us today. So Luke 6, verse 17. Here we go. So he went down with them and stood on a level place. A large crowd of his disciples were there, and a great number of people from all over Judea, from Jerusalem, and from the coastal region around Tyre and Sidon, who had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. Those troubled by impure spirits were cured. And the people all tried to touch him, because power was coming from him and healing them all. Let's go ahead and stop there. The first thing I hear when I read this passage is that this place has got to be chaotic. So much commotion is happening. People from all of the area is coming around just to hear this Jesus speak. It's maybe like the Taco Bell Arena when they are getting ready for a concert. Imagine all the people from Treasure Valley is coming to hear this show, and they're preparing to be amazed, right? So imagine people are anxiously waiting in the ticket line, hoping that they'll get their ticket before the show starts. And maybe there's children running around having fun. People are searching for the best seats. Some of you are seat savers, you know what I mean? Sometimes the lines to the restroom are super long because they don't want to have to get up in the middle of the show and miss something important. So these things, you can tell it would be quite a commotion. Who are these people who are coming to see Jesus speak? We know it's a commotion, but who are they? It seems like there's a mix of people here. There were Jesus' disciples. So let's take Matthew and Simon Peter, for instance. They were ordinary men who decided to follow Jesus. Matthew was a tax collector, seen as a traitor, as a renegade. Simon Peter was a zealot, one who had sworn to kill such traitor. A little bit of tension there maybe, right? Well, they were attending the same show together. As one looks at the rest of the disciples, the followers of Jesus, some of them would be fishermen, ordinary people, or a treasurer, or tradesmen. So let's look at some other people. who came to this show. Beyond the disciples, there were, what the Bible says, the multitude of people from other parts of the land. In particular, people from Judea, Jerusalem, and the coastal region around Tyre and Sidon. If you can't imagine how important these distances between these towns, let's take Jerusalem for instance. Jerusalem is 70 miles outside of the Sea of Galilee, which is where Jesus' show is. If you can imagine that, that is from Boise all the way to Ontario and a little bit further. So people in those days, they would travel great distances by foot. So 70 miles would be walking by foot for a whole day, non-stop. So if someone was choosing to make that journey, it would probably be a 2 days journey. It was a rugged land with hills and valleys that were very challenging, and it was often a lonely terrain. There were few people living outside those cities and farming towns. These people would go to such a great distance just to hear this Jesus. So there must be a reason why. So in verse 18, it says, they had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. So we can also include the sick and troubled souls within that multitude of people. It seems that if people were to have missed this show, that they were going to miss out on something spectacular, something amazing, something powerful. So, who is this Jesus? This person that they don't want to miss? Well, some say he's a prophet. Some say he's King of Kings. Some say he's the Son of God. To these people of the crowd, Jesus was the powerful healer. They were seeking something in their life. And when they heard of this Jesus and who he was, they realized just what it was that they were seeking. They sought that healing power. We read in verse 19, it says, and the people all tried to touch him, because power was coming from him and healing them all. So if I was to ask, who in this chapel needs healing of some sort, I would guess that most of you, maybe even all of you, would raise your hand, including myself. And this is not because it's a hospital setting. I would imagine that this whole world, if I asked them that question, that this whole world would raise their hands saying that they needed some degree of healing in their life. Some of you may not know this, but along with pastoring, I teach high schoolers. I talk about healthiness and relationships. One of the main lessons that I speak on is PIES. And this PIES is an acronym, and it's an acronym for 4 different components to a human being: physical, intellectual, emotional, and social. That's what the PIES stands for. Now, I like to add in financial and spiritual. For high schoolers, it's a lot easier for them to remember PIES, so I don't usually add in those last 2. But each of these components are part of who we are. It makes up who we are. So when one goes to Starbucks, all of those components are going with them. When someone wakes up in the morning, all those components are waking up with them. When one makes choices, all those components are being affected. When one lives in this fallen world, all parts are affected as well. Granted, some parts are affected more than others. We live in a world where evil happens and sickness happens. And when one becomes an adult, it seems like these components keep piling on. Now, because of a failing health maybe, there is now not only a physical burden, but also financial burden. Maybe now there's an emotional stress where tension between family members happen. So what do we do? Who do we turn to during these moments? Do we seek solace in our phones, getting lost in social media? Or maybe we seek the next video game so we can have some type of control on our life. Do we seek comfort with a bottle, hoping to push away the inevitable? Do we feel the need to vent and rage when already our relationships are torn? Do we tend to make ourselves busy so we don't have to confront those deeper ailings? This world is full of sickness. We seek healing. But is it the real deal? Maybe our sense of healing gives us that wow factor, that temporary fix, or that momentary amazement. But it's just an illusion. But don't be dismayed. Instead, prepare to be amazed. Whether one needs healing physically, emotionally, intellectually, financially, socially, spiritually, we all seek healing. That makes us no different from the crowd 2,000 years ago. The question is, how far are we willing to go to be amazed? This wee little man came running toward the crowd. He had heard this amazing Jesus was coming. He was speaking. This man, well, his name was Zacchaeus, and he was a tax collector, also known as, to this town, the sinner. He was not well received in most settings, but that didn't stop him from seeking this Jesus. He had heard Jesus was different. Sadly for him, he could not see through the crowd, and forcing himself through was not an option due to his height. Thinking to himself, man, if only I could see Jesus. I would do anything to see this Jesus. In that moment, he saw a sycamore tree. And, you know, usually kids climb trees, but not this time. This time, it was worth all the ridicule he may get for climbing the tree. For it turns out, he could see Jesus from this tree. When Jesus got closer to that tree, Jesus looked straight up into those branches and saw Zacchaeus, and he said, Zacchaeus, prepare to be amazed. In that moment, Zacchaeus experienced God's power, his healing touch, his saving grace. Standing in the middle of a crowd, a woman was getting in her tippy toes looking for Jesus. She saw him. He was getting closer and closer. Her excitement was just so overjoyed. Could it really be? Jesus is right in front of her eyes. All this woman had left was her faith. She was alone in this crowd of people. She was ailing from a sickness that no one could heal. As Jesus grew closer, she thought, if only I could touch his cloak, I would be healed. She reached out and was prepared to be amazed. At the touch of Jesus' cloak, she was healed. These two people went to great lengths to be amazed by God's healing power. Would we do the same? If we were in their shoes and we were on this, by the shores of the Sea of Galilee, and we heard this man named Jesus was coming, and that he was healing people, would we flock to him? Or would we think, some crazy's at it again? We could choose not to have any part and live with our sickness and our temporary healings. Or we could have faith that this Jesus is really who he says he is. Brad Paisley once wrote, "Those crazy Christians, what if they're wrong? But what if they're right? What if this Jesus really was the real deal? We have all established that we need healing of some degree in our life. So are we willing to walk far, climb a tree, reach out to be healed by this amazing God?" One of my favorite quotes is by a pastor, Stephen C. Fletcher. He said, "You can have as much of God as you want. The question is, are you willing to take as much as you can get?" God is offering you his healing power. It isn't some magic trick or illusion. I'm telling you, prepare to be amazed. And the truth is, there's no preparation needed because God is healing and he is amazing right now, right here. I believe all good things come from God. Rather than trying to maintain control over our life, trying to get by on that temporary healing, let's abandon ourselves to God's amazing, powerful healing. Believe with me that God's power is the real deal. If you have made the choice today to be healed by the amazing God, please feel free to talk to me afterward. I would love to pray with you. So let's go ahead and pray together right now.